All right. Thank you everyone for joining this webinar. I'm confident that this session will be valuable for each one of you. On that note, let me quickly introduce myself and kick things off. I'm Ajay, responsible for client relationships and account management for pharma accounts. I joined I2E earlier this year as a senior manager, and I bring in 14 years of experience all throughout into business development and account management. So here is a glimpse of what we will cover today. Now, introduction of today's speaker, overview of the agenda, a brief introduction to I2E Consulting, followed by the presentation and a demo. So we'll also have short polls related to today's topic. Your participation will be greatly appreciated. Right. So on the screen, I'm pleased to introduce today's speaker, Carlos Nunes. He is the Vice President of Portfolio Analytics at I2E and also a valued member of our advisory committee. He has over 25 years of experience helping leaders across various organizations and making decisions. Carlos spent nearly 23 years at Pfizer, where he oversaw portfolio and decision analysis. So he was also responsible for portfolio solutions and processes, enabling pipeline investment decision making for the C-suite and business level leaderships. So today's call is an opportunity to tap into Carlos' extensive experience, aligning it with the interests and goals of this webinar. So moving on, the agenda for today's webinar is to provide an overview of I2E, along with the following key topics, portfolio management in pharma, exploring investment strategies, risk management, and etc. Challenges in data management and decision making, an overview of pillars of portfolio precision, crafting and predicting portfolio scenarios, and a demonstration of Clairvoyant's dashboard. So, and then we would also have a dedicated Q&A session. So in the interest of time, what we have done is we have dedicated the last 15 minutes to question and answers. But, please feel free to drop any of your questions in the chat and we'll try our best to address them during the call or during the Q&A, or if the time doesn't permit, then we'll get back to you over an email. This slide is to give you a high-level overview of what we do as an organization and where we come from. So we are a pharma-focused IT services company established in 2008 in Connecticut in the US. So since our inception, we have expanded our presence to include offices in the US, UK, Canada, and India. So throughout our history, we have remained dedicated to serving pharma industry, collaborating with companies of all sizes. A few clients are listed on the right. Now we work with the likes of Pfizer, Alexion, Merck, and etc. So, we follow adaptive architecture, offering you the flexibility to bring in your AI tool of choice and your data sources of choice and incorporate them within our solutions. So this is possible because of our partnerships with multiple players. We are a Microsoft certified gold partner. We're also partners with AWS and Automation Anywhere. We have experience in all the project portfolio management tools, be it Planisware or Microsoft Project Online. We are premium partners with Dataiku, one of the leading data science platforms, or the AI platform that specializes in the field of data science and machine learning. So we also have partnerships with Snowflake and also our partners with Domo, which is a cloud-based business intelligence and data analytics platform. To the tail end of it, the certifications and recognitions, we proudly hold ISO certification. We have earned a spot on the INC 5000, on the INC 5000 list thrice. And we have consistently received the Great Place to Work for the last 3 years consistently. So there's this to give you a glimpse of who we are. There are vast topics which we could cover, but we would like to stick to the agenda for today. Moving on, Carlos, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, that would be perfect. Thanks, Ajay. So the topic of the talk really is about managing portfolio risk and optimizing decision making. And so effectively, we're going to do that through technology delivery methods that can help you as potential clients, or and in the pharma industry. So we're going to ask a poll right now, and Ajay's going to sort of kick this off just to get a sense, from a portfolio management perspective in pharma, what makes a good management, a good practice in portfolio management. And I'd like you to take a moment, not more than a minute here, just to prioritize what you think the most important factor is: stakeholder alignment on decision criteria, forecasting, collecting, and managing accurate data, visualizing investment risk and potential, or investment scenario planning and analysis. So take a moment and we'll just collect your thoughts before we get into the conversation. Okay, Jay, if you can wrap that up, then we'll catch your thoughts. And I'm just going to go into, I don't know if you can see the slide here that I've got up, so I'm going to move it out of my way. So here's what we assessed, and we'll get your responses in a moment, but we think all of them are important, obviously. It's just a matter of priority. And the way that we would tailor solutions is really helping you to make sure that you control the key elements. So what makes a good practice? Really, it's discipline in forecasting, collecting, and managing timely and credible knowledge of portfolio assets, and then the capability to visualize asset risk and potential to effectively then compare and contrast investment decision options. So we want to control the information, make sure we understand what the portfolio has and can do. And then when it comes time to optimize our investments, we want to compare and contrast the available options. So that leads us to sort of ask the question, well, what is, the overall portfolio we're focused on? And the way that we look at it, in my experience, having done this quite a number of years in the pharma R&D space, is really, it's from the lab, the initial idea of the medicine, all the way to getting it into the marketplace. And so we're going to look at portfolio management of all those investments in medicine assets across that span. And to enable such a broad span of time, as you know, in pharma R&D, this could be 15 plus years, we need to make sure that we measure the opportunities in a comparable way. And so we're going to look at what are the organizational objectives of the portfolio optimization that we're trying to manage, and make sure that we balance risk and opportunities appropriately. So from an objectives perspective, clearly late stage portfolio might have very fixed economic measures that we'll be looking at. There might be a thought about how to effectively invest appropriately across key focus therapeutic areas or disease areas. We want to make sure that there's appropriate flow in the pipeline, that we have enough early assets to keep supplementing the potential of the portfolio as new opportunities launch into the market. There are plenty of opportunities coming through in R&D. It may be that we want to give space for appropriate technologies. So not just about what will return the most value in the short term, but what kind of technical capabilities can actually enable the portfolio to achieve like major growth potential, blockbusters, maybe in a vaccine technology, or maybe in an oncology delivery technology, and so forth. Size matters. So, how many assets in there helps distribute the risk. And so we want to find out how many assets, not across the portfolio only, but possibly in appropriate groupings by therapeutic area, for example. And obviously, money matters. So we want to make sure that therapies that have good value for patients also have the potential to return appropriate value for the business. Now, that's all balanced with a lot of risk. And so we want to make sure that we factor in technical feasibility, regulatory hurdles that we'll have to think about as we think about, moving it into a patient population, new medicines, maybe novel medicines even. What the competition is doing, are development plans accelerated beyond what competition has out there? What standard of care? How do we compete against that? What does our product have to look like to get approved? Is the market ready? If this is novel, there is a risk of the market not being willing to take this new medicine on, or that payers may not be ready to pay for it, and so forth. And that sort of spins into, how do we define the market potential? So those are all the elements that will go into our portfolio thing. So the idea is not just to sort of capture the portfolio, but then to empower how we choose to invest in that portfolio. And we know that organizations, or at least my experience has been that working in organizations, there are lots of segments of contribution, and people are doing their jobs, but they may not understand what each other's jobs are. And so we end up with data silos and inconsistencies in groups like our clinical planning or our finance focus or strategic decision making. and so forth. So what our objective is to bring all the contributors of the portfolio inputs and portfolio contributions into an aligned way of looking at the data, of capturing the data, and being able to make decisions on that data. So we're going to try to take out misrepresentations or conflicting representations of data that one group might be representing the portfolio on different than another group. And so sometimes these conflicting reports, for example, may test the credibility of the data overall. But we do not want that to happen. We want to make sure that the enterprise has clear strategic and operational business goals. We want to work with our partners, our clients, to ensure that they are aligned on how they think about the value measurements for their investments, both at an asset level and on an aggregate portfolio level. So each of our asset investment decisions should naturally, or evaluations should naturally roll up into a portfolio view. And that should be done in a consistent and in a trustworthy way where the evaluation data and the forecasts are credible and believable. So if you put all that together, which is what we're proposing to do with our solutions, then you get the ability to evaluate, visualize, and contrast basically any kind of investment scenario you want to look at, be it at an asset level, a study level even, or at the overall portfolio level. So we want to consider really important things as we're thinking about building that infrastructure, which is sort of our core competency here. It's bringing all the parts of the organization and the investments that you have made as an enterprise to ensure that we preserve the hard work that you've done in organizing the information and preserving things like data quality and controlling data collection points and drawing directly from the source systems so that we're not replicating and possibly misrepresenting them and having synchronization issues. So basically always reflecting the data collected at source. And then leveraging reference metrics and benchmarks basically to test that those data elements are appropriate for the assessment that we're running, and so that they can be tested against reference metrics or benchmarks, and those are stratified appropriately by therapeutic area and or other dimensions that are appropriate. Data sensitivity is equally important, and I've worked on many situations where there is a lot of data collected, but it is not useful. And so what we would work with our clients to do is focus on those data elements of the projects that really affect the way that we would invest. So knowing exactly how many patients are recruited on a trial at a particular given point may be useful for the management of clinical trials, but for investing in a particular program, it probably isn't. But is recruitment on track? Maybe. So the sensitivity of the data and the precision of the data that we're looking at really ends up guiding how we collect the information and what information is most useful to ensure quality. And then finally, the data's out of date. It's not really helpful. So if we're looking at 1 month old data and the organization knows that the data has been updated, then we want to make sure that we're reflecting what the organization and the decision makers that we're delivering reporting and analytic solutions for believe and understand that the data is reflective of what they know from their assets and their portfolio. Okay, so now we have all the data collected. It's credible and trustworthy and organized in a consistent way, all aggregated with all the key components of decision making. We need to think about what we're going to do with that. So there are different ways to thinking about decision making for a portfolio. One is the very operational way. What do we have? How much is it going to cost? Can we continue to deliver what we're delivering with the money that we have available? And how much will that return for us so that, operationally we stay on track of the near-term objectives? Then we have another way to look at the portfolio, which is major events occurring. So despite what we have forecast, the reality is things happen. Some things are positives, like one of our products might progress from a phase 2 to a phase 3 trial, and therefore we want to understand the effect of that change on the portfolio value. Or if we're not so fortunate, maybe something fails its phase 3 trial and we have a major gap in our portfolio, and we have to think about the effects and the opportunities that are presented to us. So a decisionable event would be, what happens if pass or fail on a major asset, or a platform technology, or any other kind of broader effect that could have a consideration for how we would invest in our portfolio otherwise. Okay, and then there's the very strategic focus, which is thinking about the portfolio long-term and contemplating, where we have our mix in the portfolio. So are we appropriately invested in a particular therapeutic area, all the way from early bench work in the discovery space, all the way to the marketplace? And what is our ability to succeed in that therapeutic area given the competitive landscape and so forth? How much investment do we put in? How much return could we potentially gain? And thinking about that, overall across the portfolio to make sure that we have the right mix across therapeutic areas. So those tend to be much more than an asset level focus. They're on the aggregate, all of the opportunities that we have, and may inform things like business development in cases where we may have, decisionable events and or gaps in our long-term portfolio flow. So what do we want to do in sort of enabling an environment where we can do scenario planning? Well, we would think about scenario-based focus. And that means, like, what does a portfolio look like in its current state? But what could it look like if we accelerated a program, or we dropped a program, or we brought in a new therapeutic focus? And so these are the kinds of things that we'll want to think about and look at alternative ways of considering those financial opportunities or those investment opportunities. Then there's, and we would do that more manually. And then there's the ability to turn on some of the new capabilities that we talked about in the technologies that we're working on, like data IQ, and start to do probability-driven predictions. So we know what the normal benchmark delivery capabilities are and so forth of the portfolio. Well, what if we brought this many new products into our early stage portfolio and nurture them so that they can deliver on the other end? What kind of portfolio, if we make the right investments early, could we see in 5 to 10 years from now? So we may be able to introduce probability-driven predictions so that we can understand, the power of the portfolio as we make early investments and what can turn around, or understand the points where we might want to make interim investments like asset acquisitions or even large-scale other company mergers. And then the other end of the scenario focus is to learn from our past experience and leverage our historical data to refine our predictions and to just continue to get better at how we forecast our potential future. So our skill at I2E is visualization, data integration and visualization. And so we believe that doing scenario analysis and decision-making in a visual way is really, really impactful and really helps to clarify where decision makers can't see through all of the noise of the data. It starts to bring capabilities more and investment options more obvious. So visual analytics enhanced with intuitive data representation, delivered through interactive dashboards for scenario evaluation that lead to clear insights, and they're tailored comparative visualizations that inform and reinforce quality decisions. So I want to showcase a platform accelerator that we're calling Clairvoyance that is really optimized to enable all of the portfolio data that you already have in your own shop to really bring it together in a way that enables that sort of analytic perspective for the executive. So your executives don't want to go into your project management system. They don't want to go into your decision analysis system directly. They don't want to go into your finance system, these operational tools that enable you to get this data. They want to go into a custom designed solution that enables them to ask the questions that they want to ask to see the portfolio investment that they have available to them, very much like their own personal finance portfolio. Look at the composition of that portfolio, look at its potential, and understand where risks and opportunities are, and then try to evaluate some scenario options where they can make decisions. So what we do through this clairvoyance accelerator is to bring it together and help customize the executives, the executive decision makers, and their teams to have the insight and lens to really have low touch management, high visibility, and direct decision information so that they can feel comfortable about the major decisions they need to make. Shift gears a little bit, and now that you got a whole bunch of information about what we're talking about, we are going to shift over to the actual sort of demo of our clairvoyance framework. Now, I'll just be clear with you all, this is a prototype based on lots of experience of having built specific solutions for clients and garnering the key components that work, and showcase to you how flexible getting all the information assembled can enable very quick and customizable dashboards that could be very, very tailor fit to the organization executives in your shop. And I'll just give you the key elements to give you a flavor of the kind of data that we would be touching and using in this framework. So the tool we're calling clairvoyance, but obviously you can brand this and do what you want with it. The idea very much is that you have the data and the ability to focus on how to effectively deliver this information for meaningful analysis. So what we've done is taken the typical pharma portfolio information like therapeutic area, phase of development, say project leader, the name of the asset, various things that would be dimensions that you might want to look at, slice across, filter on, and you'll see as we do a filter, for example, on one of them, everything in the filter capability would optimize to, or would filter out to what's meaningful there. So if I looked at the whole portfolio, I would see that we have 30 projects in this mock portfolio that I've been working on. And then if I, filter to a particular TA, I built a portfolio here that is flowers and different ways that the flowers are organized. And so in this particular bush portfolio, there are 9 projects, and you can see at the bottom, I have the 9 projects for this particular TA. And if I went to all of them, then you would see that I have more projects in the list than different TAs also reflected. So if I stay in this view with all of the therapeutic areas, I see the whole composition of the portfolio that I have listed here with all of the different phases of development represented, which you can see in multiple components of the visualization. So here I'm showing key measurements of value. ENPV is a common measurement. For those of you familiar with the financial valuations, it's expected net present value, and it gives an aggregate value in today's dollars of the potential of those 30 assets. So if given probability adjusted outcomes, we were to launch the potential of the portfolio, we would achieve $15.4 billion in value on this particular portfolio. With an expected cost, and this is risk adjusted and time value of money adjusted, of $2.5 billion would give us, in really simple calculations, a 6-fold value proposition. So productivity index of 6.1. Of that portfolio, probability adjusted, we wouldn't get 30 projects launched. We would, in the way that these are modeled out, get 13.74 projects launched. And the expected internal rate of return for that particular portfolio would look like 46%. The equivalent information that we have here is not just the metrics that are meaningful to the executive, but what does that look like over time? So these aggregated as single measures can be meaningful, but it's really hard to see what's going on. So here we provide a net income, which ultimately is necessary to do the financial calculation. And you can see that Well, we're going to launch some early on. I'm not mapping the inline portfolio here, just the R&D portfolio. So from an inline portfolio, you see slow growth all the way up to sort of a peak here for this portfolio of 1.4, and then it starts to trail off. And so you can see I mapped out all the way to 2050 in this mock portfolio, and so that's kind of where your portfolio peaks. The cost associated to that you could have mapped and quickly clickable for your executive, and they could see that we have an overall decline in the cost here as time progresses, because things are launching and they're not in R&D anymore. So this for me highlights, well, we don't see the long-term portfolio renewal, a conversation we often have with our clients. And so you may want to have an engine that we could help generate the general renewal entry of products that we don't know of yet today, but that would likely level out the overall cost and revenue flow on this portfolio potential. So to give you an idea, then this is showing you a time series view of what's happening over time. And if you want to ultimately create portfolio flow, we would want to understand what's happening now, what happened in the past, how is it contributing, and what will happen in the future as we think about predicting the future portfolio. So this current portfolio that we're looking at ultimately would have launches mapped here. This is often something useful to look at. How many launches are we going to get in a particular year, and to see the overall distribution of launches. As mentioned, we might want to see that by the therapeutic area specifically, to see if the therapeutic area is appropriately occupied through all of the future years, and what's going on in those particular launch activities. So in this one, it's pretty distributed over many years, and you have a gap year here. But when you look at the overall portfolio, you see, oh, we still have a gap here in 27. Maybe an opportunity here to do something about this year. So you got a lot of a bolus of activity in 25 and 26, nothing in 27, and then some in 28. Maybe when we're thinking about, should we shift a program out a little bit if we have the capacity, non-competitive risk, then maybe we want to shift something out to 27, for example. And then here, just maybe not so relevant at the moment, but this could show LOEs if we had our inline portfolio visible. What are the major threats coming at us? In this case, I didn't put inline in here, but it shows the LOEs and when they will begin for the current R&D substrate. So that would begin in 23, and then we would see the LOEs start to increase out in 2038. So that gives you sort of at the financial levels and the delivery levels some useful information for the broad picture. But the truth is, you kind of end up managing at a sort of 15 to 18 month window. And so you could have a nearer term milestone view. For example, here we've seen this really well adopted in our pharma clients' environments, where they might be looking at, what are the major portfolio events that will be occurring over the next 6 quarters. And what we've done here is mapped, what phase of development those assets are in, and then when the occurrence is going to happen. So if I hovered over here, I could see that I've got rhododendron here that is going to submit in this period, 24. And we'll have an NPV of 820, PTRS of 50, ER of 36. And then if I wanted to do any interactive click through that, I could go to rhododendron, for example, and look at specific information. So that's a possibility. Again, I'm just in a mock-up, so it's not fully active on this view, but those are the kinds of capabilities that we could easily custom build into any of these views. We're not tied to a particular technology. We've had success delivering this in client standard technologies. We tend to do very custom work because we find that the audience loves tailored solutioning. So we usually do custom web design for these solutions. In any case, we don't, this is a mock-up just to give you a sense for the kind of information that we have assembled to enable quick delivery of these dashboards. Here in the projected by TA just gives you a sense of the distribution of the investments across the TA categories. It's really just count-based, but could be value-based, could be risk-based. It could be, any sort of view that you want to look at. Likewise, projects by phases. You could see sort of this is maybe a flow style view. How many assets do you have in your portfolio at different stages of development, so that you make sure you're not wholly loaded in late stage assets and then you have nothing behind them when they launch. So, these are just quick checkpoints to make sure you have good balance. And then most of the time you want to make sure you get to approval. That's the whole purpose of the exercise. So you want to kind of forecast, like, what is the target for if success, approvals that you would get in each year of development, and how well distributed are those products across the different TAs. Okay, so that's a quick view of that. And then we have the ability, and there's endless number of attributes, as I said before, trying to be targeted and specific based on the sensitivity of the data towards the value of the opportunities that you're looking at. Try to focus on only the useful information that helps you either filter the portfolio set or inform the decisions that are required. So I've included a few here, and this would be part of the standard, readiness offering that we would put together, is what data that is the most useful for building these things and building them quickly and usefully. So TA, ENPV, PTRS, launch year, phase, start date, and there are more, but we could talk about that in the overall data engineering that we've done for this. Okay, so that gives you a sense for it. As I mentioned, I can filter by phase. I could filter by TA, I could filter by any of these things in a live solution. In this case, I'll give you a perspective on what we would do if we go to specific project. So scenario comes up both at portfolio and project level, but I'm going to showcase it here from a project perspective. So if I click in one of the projects from the portfolio, which I could do in a dynamic portfolio from anywhere in the screen, but in this case, we've activated it from the project list. So Rose Regal then becomes visible on the screen with different attributes related to its project. So where it is in its current state, which TA belongs to, what type of asset it is, if you will, in this case, what kind of flower it is, status of that project, where it is in its budgeting cycle. Is it funded? Is it committed for its phase development? Is it under review? So forth. These are things that might be useful when you're doing a budget review. And then, who is it that you could talk to if you have questions about this project? So we have all the standard metrics still visible here, a little bit of extra stuff on budgeting that I put onto this view, and then its timeline. So unlike the other view, which was a focused timeline on what's happening in the near term, what tends to be useful at a project level is to understand its history as well. This historical stuff, if we're preserving a historical database, which we help our clients do, then can become a useful reference for historical analysis, trending, and performance-based benchmarking. So if we look at the data here, we see, when it achieved its different milestones and which milestones are coming up, what the dates are, what its current revenue trends are, its cost projection, and aggregated on a P&L, we get the net income. Great. So that's informative about current state, but we have a decision to make coming up right now. We may have had an interim analysis, and we're trying to figure out, are we going to do a breakthrough on this? Let me stop sharing, and I'll switch over to the Q&A, and maybe we'll pause here and ask some folks for questions. And if I can get this back, I'll show you some more stuff. So perhaps we can do that in the Q&A. So I'll pause there. I wanted to show you scenario planning at the project level, but I think that's going to have to wait for a moment. I think at this point, Ajay, I'm going to go to you on the Q&A and see if you can bring up the poll. So the poll asks, based on what you've seen and what you've heard me talk about, is your organization decision ready? And I put basically some 4 states here. We have no decision governance model. Our data is everywhere, not available to guide decision makers. Our data is managed and integrated, but hard for decision makers to use. Or we are a well-oiled decision machine. Decision makers make data-driven decisions. So take a moment, vote on that, and then hopefully we can bring up the responses to the both questions, and I will stop sharing my screen and then see if I can recover where we left off. So Jay, I'll let you take it away on giving poll results, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, the attendees are still voting. I would like to give another minute.
No problem.
Yeah. So for everyone, we are now open for question and answers. So please put them in the Q&A box. We shall take them one by one.
Okay, so I got things back, which is great. And let me just see what the results of the poll were. So we have no decision governance model 0. I'm thrilled that that's the case. Our data is everywhere and not available to guide decision makers. That's a third, more or less, a little less than a third of the audience. Our data is managed and integrated, but hard for decision makers to use. That's about half, which is great to hear. We are a well-oiled decision machine. I like that. So that's a quarter of the audience, more or less. So, okay, good. So some of you really need help and some of you already got this down. I'm thrilled to hear that. But there are always changes in organizations. They're always shifting, they're always acquiring, and there are always new portfolios. So even those well-oiled machines sometimes need assistance, and we'd be thrilled to talk to you as well, or even learn from you where we can improve delivery. But certainly for those who need some help, we would love to talk to you and see what we can do. So I will close the poll here. I didn't get the responses on the previous one, Ajay, but it would be interesting if we had them to pop them up at some point. I will open, oh, we have it, great, okay. So what are the primary things of interest? Stakeholder alignment on decision criteria. That has been one of the greatest challenges I have faced in my career. The data sometimes seems to be the easier one. The stakeholder alignment is certainly challenging. Forecasting, collecting, and managing data, accurate data, that's about a third. So we were a quarter, a third. Visualizing investment, risk, and potential. Okay, so people don't see the visualizing as that important, at least not as important. And then scenario planning, a quarter. So pretty well balanced, I would say. And I mean, we think they're all important. Obviously, it was a question of what your most important was. So it looks like, depending on what your state of business is, you may have needs in different spaces. So thank you for those polling results. I'm going to close out here. And then Ajay, if you can help me with the questions, I will do my best to answer what the audience is interested in.
Absolutely.
And then if the questions come back that we want to continue the scenario planning, which I will attempt to do here, I will go back into the scenario view to show that. Okay, questions?
So there's one question which says, what is the difference between your system and Enrich Consulting? So Enrich Consulting was taken over by Plan B. Okay, yeah, please.
Okay, happy to answer that question. So in my career, I've worked with probably every project portfolio management solution and decision analysis capability. I would say that since I'm specifically asked, we don't have a formal relationship with Enrich, though we have worked with our clients. I mean, it's broadly used. The capabilities are really about valuation and decision support in the tool itself, but tend to have difficulty bringing data in from other parts of the organization unless the clients want to go directly through their tool. The other reality is they're not necessarily optimized for executive decisions or the audience that is the executive. They tend to be optimized as a tool for the decision analysts. So I would say in my experience, despite having worked in the Enrich tool or other tools like Enrich, the need of the executive is at a higher level. And a more customized solution like this one really doesn't optimize for the decision options deep in the tool, but surfaces what something like Enrich would offer in its decision modeling and presents it in a way so that the scenarios and the portfolio options are very clear to the decision maker. So we would work in a complementary way with a tool such as that or other tools like that. And we think that those are excellent tools, that or others. We like to be system integrators and partners with all of the specialists who do very specific things, but know that to get to the last mile with your decision maker and not have to take your data out and work in Excel or try to push it into a reporting tool to, do your final presentations for your executive board meeting. There are better ways to do that. There are optimized ways to source your data appropriately, bring it together in a place like this, and make sure it's ready, available for your executives to have an interactive way without all the noise and the buttons of tools like, the one you mentioned, in the way of the key information they're looking for. I hope that answered the question.
We have a couple more, Carlos. Would you like to finish it and then answer the questions, or would you like to go ahead with the questions?
Yeah, so let me just go through the scenario piece that, a mock-up, and, these may exist in those other tools as well, but as mentioned, it's really about, sourcing the data from the places where they're the authoritative sources, and the product mentioned earlier may be one of those. We would bring that in and present the scenarios here in an organized way, instead of you necessarily doing it in PowerPoint, which is inevitably where most people land. So we could build solutions that are report ready, where you could generate your PowerPoint deck if you need it, because some boardrooms just still require it. And some that we've experienced have gone to this where they could do it from their desktop, but in the boardroom, they also use such tools. So that would be helpful. In this case, the particular product that I'm looking at has a phase 3 activity going on, but may have a potential to have a breakthrough. And so we might want to accelerate its delivery by a year and submit a little bit earlier. And then there would be some value differences for that particular opportunity. Or we may decide to delay this, in which case the registration goes out further. The point to mention is just that there are different consideration scenarios that we could have, quantitative measurements around, what the difference between the scenarios are, specifically like peak revenues, the risk involved in one versus the other. Obviously, we're going at a higher risk, but we might get a higher return, and that has an impact on the value. That would be modeled out in your decision modeling capabilities. But to see it very cleanly, you have these capabilities to show, for example, what the differences in your value are, or in your revenue are, your cost, and your net income, and then be able to compare and contrast scenarios in such a way. Okay, so that was really the idea, is just to show that the ability to have an interactive environment here to highlight and showcase these decision information components that are important to decisions is really the focus here, and to be able to bring them together in real time in a ready environment that, as the organization data updates, is available for you to click through, interact with, and understand is the key. Okay, so the next question, Ajay, and then perhaps some time for other people to ask.
So there's a compliment which says, this dashboard is very nice. It is also very focused on larger companies with a strong late stage portfolio. So the question is, what solutions are there for a growing and small companies with an early portfolio? FTE capacity and identifying constraints are also critical to small companies.
Yeah, so I would say your value measurement criteria that I mentioned early on in the deck. And so what do you optimize for? What are your objectives for your portfolio? So if you're an early, smaller company with earlier stage assets, maybe value isn't so important and you're not spending so much time in assessing sort of economic measures, but things like, the breakthrough technologies that you're working on are meaningful, and the ability for those breakthrough technologies to spawn multiple indication therapies. So those kinds of things, and its ability and its capacity, not from a pure economic measurement perspective like an ENPV, but through its breakthrough potential through more qualitative measures, like, it has the ability to spawn a franchise of maybe 4 indication assets within a disease area would be meaningful. Or it has the ability to disrupt, current standard of care, and therefore the potential opportunity is of significant size. There may also be things that you're looking at in the early stage portfolio that are more qualitative measures, but that could be assessed in sort of a multi-attribute model. And so we could use the attribution measurements to provide an equal level of quantitative assessment, So we could compare one asset through its qualitative assessment, like its breakthrough potential or the ability to fill unmet medical need, or, and you could have a dozen of these qualitative measures. Each of the assets, scaled on that qualitative measurement scale, and then aggregated to be a composite measurement that you could use to compare and contrast different opportunities. So they don't all have to be financial. And hopefully that answers your question around an early stage portfolio. You might want to have some assets that are loosely, modeled with its potential, still using a financial model, and also integrate a qualitative assessment like these measures I talked about: breakthrough potential, size of opportunity, disruptive technology, and so forth. So they could be complementary, but if all you have is that, we would focus, and this is why we believe customized solutions tend to be better, because wherever you are in your journey, if you're a smaller company and early stage assets, you could get rid of all of this. The same framework still applies. You could still use all the same mechanisms to compare and contrast your asset investment decisions, but tailor that to the key qualitative elements of an early portfolio. Next question.
Yeah, there are a couple more interesting questions. The next one is, how do your dashboards differ from other dashboard solutions?
So I would say the same that I mentioned previously. I think there are dashboarding solutions that are generic. Although we're calling this and branding this as clairvoyance, really the benefit is in providing a rapid framework for quick deployment. We've done the background work to source from source systems in a very repeatable way, because our clients tend to use the same underlying technologies, either for project planning or financial accounting. We've organized the data in logical ways to be able to quickly deliver this information. And if you're using one of the products mentioned before or others, we have worked with those products to source their information. The idea is we have a data model that's ready for reporting and analysis that allows you to have this really quickly delivered. So custom developed solutions, obviously, anyone can do. The insights and the knowledge of how the pharma industry works and how to organize the data in a ready way to offer these kinds of dynamic views is where we think we offer a good differentiation: speed and industry knowledge.
The next question is, which project management and decision modeling software do you integrate with?
So one was mentioned already. At our clients, we have worked with them. We're gold partners with Planisware, so we have worked with Planisware extensively. That was on our branding. We've worked with Microsoft in our branding as well. From a data integration perspective, we have a gold partnership with Dataiku, so we work with those technologies. But we're pretty technology agnostic. Our clients dictate which technologies that we would use, and what they use, we source from. And so we don't necessarily just pull the data from their technologies. We may work within their technologies as well, and their solutions, their systems, to optimize the way that they're doing their work within their project planning environment or within their decision analysis environment, so that they can get the value of this front end, so that their executives have the knowledge that they need coming out of those systems to make these decisions. So sometimes those decisions are deployed and they may not have the uptake with the executive community. What we try to do is work with that audience to increase the uptake of the information and the knowledge about their portfolios. So if they, and I think the prompted question came up before, they have the knowledge available to them, or they have the information about the portfolio, but it's hard for them to get access to it. This is the problem that we're trying to solve. Sometimes it's about getting the data connected, and sometimes it's about just delivering it. So we will work with any of the underlying vendors, Enrich included, since their name got brought up, but any of the others that are established in the organizations that we work with, and we can deliver these front ends with either the technologies that we think are the optimal for customized and sexy, if you will, executive dashboards, or using enterprise technologies that they already work with: Tableau, Spotfire. It could be SharePoint with Power BI. We have had some great success, doing things with Angular and that's really highly customizable and flashy. So those are some of the capabilities that differentiate us and make our dashboards a little different.
So Carlos, one last question. Can data from our internal CRM system and external database like IQVIA can be integrated in Clairvoyance?
Certainly can. Clairvoyance, again, is a framework that allows us to source. So we haven't done specific sourcing for the CRM data into this, but if we were doing an analysis for client trial data or like a control tower for your clinical trial management and decision-making there, then it would obviously behoove us to pull directly from a CRM. What tends to happen, however, at the clients that we have worked with is they already have data lakes. Sometimes we've participated in helping to define their data lakes or expand their data lakes. But that CRM data tends to come into a data lake and we source that data from there. So if that's already in place, and we would likely not source directly from the CRM system, we would source from the data lake. And that's how we have built control towers and other capabilities, not just this kind of executive dashboard for investment decision making, but the operational style control towers that we also build tend to look at that more CRM style data. So yes, not directly from the source systems, because we tend to think that that's broadly used data across a lot of different parts of the organization. And so we will pull it from the data lake.
Excellent. So there are a couple more questions, but since we are on top of the hour with a couple of minutes left, we would be responding to those questions over an email. So, we regularly host insightful sessions addressing the industry's pressing concerns. To stay updated on the industry trends and upcoming events, we kindly invite you to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletters. Your participation in our webinars would be greatly appreciated. So our team will send this recording as a URL in an email at the earliest possible. So please feel free to revisit the webinar and or forward it to your team. It will also be available on our website. So
well, thank you. It was a pleasure to speak with you all, and I hope you got some value out of this, and I look forward to a next session.
All right. So just to close, I2U's Clairvoyance harmonizes data, providing a digital dashboard for critical project level information. This unified project portfolio view grants transparency into project composition and performance, facilitating informed decisions on investment scenarios. So it does foster improved decision making, enhanced efficiency and productivity, advanced risk management, greater transparency and accountability, ensuring scalability and future readiness. So if you would like to get into further conversation on the executive dashboard, please feel free to reach out to me and we can have a deep dive session. So just wanted to highlight that. Anything from your end, Carlos, before I close?
Nothing. I just hope to speak with those of you interested, and I'm certainly available to provide sort of in-house consultancy or just have some conversations with you to understand your needs better. Thank you.
All right. So I think that's all we wanted to cover, and I hope you took some valuable inputs from this webinar. And thanks so much, everyone, for your time. We really appreciate it. Thanks, Carlos, for this session and the entire backend team of I2U for making this happen. Cheers.